All right, welcome everybody to our Regional and State Championships info webinar. My name is Lauren Salter. I am our Senior Director of Unified Champion Schools, and welcoming you all here today. Want to go over what does postseason in bocce look like. We're having a really exciting bocce season happening so far. We've got a lot of activity going on. We know that we've got some makeup days that are in our futures for many of our schools due to this white precipitation that has come upon us recently. But we're hoping that through this webinar, you'll get some more information on what postseason is going to look like. I've got a couple of staff that are also joining me today as well. Ashley, her in our Greater Philadelphia region, is running the back end for me, so I appreciate that. I see Stephanie Taylor from the Three Rivers region is also joining us here today. So grateful that those two folks can also be a part of the webinar as well. So why don't we go ahead and get started? Actually, you want to kick it over to the next slide for me, please? All right. So we're going to move through this agenda today. We're going to talk about what advancement looks like in general. What is that process from what you're doing right now to states? We'll talk about the regional competitions, what the format's like, what it looks like, as well as what does state championships looks like come towards the end of March. Talk about the importance of the letter of intent, go through some general facts of each of those things, kind of what it looks like, and make sure that we take everybody's questions. This is completely public information, so please share with all your friends. This is something that can be shared with everybody. We want to make sure that your coaches are informed, your athletic directors are informed, and your parents are informed. So everybody's kind of in the know of like what this process looks like, because nobody likes to be surprised, right? So we will work through that. We will, after this, again, as I mentioned previously, we will provide the slide deck for your reference. We'll provide a link to the recording. There is also a document that will lay out the regional assignments based upon leagues as well that will come out with this information. So you'll have a number of different assets that come to you to assist you in making those decisions. Is your team interested in participating in postseason, and what the heck does it look like? I want to make sure that you are fully prepared to take that on and feel comfortable with it and excited to jump into it all. All right, next slide, please. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty of you're in regular season. What happens next? If you are on this webinar, I have some inclination that you have some interest in what postseason looks like and that you want to know what we're going to do with that postseason advancement. So how does your team move from where they're competing now into how do they qualify for a state championship, right? So we'll work through that first, and then we'll get into kind of like what do those higher levels of competition look like with layout. All right. So here is what postseason in general looks like. We have had a significant amount of growth over the past few years. If you were a part of seasons last year and you saw this slide, it looks the same. Okay, so the process of that is not changing. We've exploded in our numbers. We have over 500 teams competing across the state, which is phenomenal. We are regularly scheduled games right now is over 669 regular season games of bocce being played throughout the state of Pennsylvania, which is just phenomenal. When we factor in postseason play, including league championships, regionals, and state championships, we are well over 700 bocce competitions that will be played between regular season to state championship competition. So, and that's all due in part to all your dedication to making sure that you have teams, they're trained well, and they're excited to continue competition. Every year we get asked to add more and more to the schedule, and our team does a really great job of working with you all to be able to provide that. So looking at this diagram here, you're going to see, hey, it all starts at the base, right? After your regular season, we go into a league playoff format. Each of those formats and the number of teams in that format are going to be explicitly expressed to you by your UCS director, okay? You will have your LOI that you're going to have to turn in. We want to make sure that you have that ready to go. We'll talk about what an LOI is a little bit further in the presentation. Ultimately, a letter of intent says, we want postseason, right? We want postseason. We're all in. We're going to do all the levels. So we're not going to get to regionals and say, nope, we're not interested in an overnight. We're not taking competition opportunity. We're not taking slots away from teams. Okay. Like I said, we have 500 teams, over 500 teams across the state. Ultimately, we're working from that number up to that regional number. 64 teams will qualify for regional competition across the state. We'll have 8 regional events that happen, and in each of those regional events, 8 teams will be placed in those. So there'll be an assignment per league of where those schools that qualify, those teams that qualify, will attend regional. So you will know that in advance. So if you are in a York Lancaster league, either of those leagues, you'll know what regional you're assigned to should you win your league. Okay. So those allotments are based on those different league sizes, and the top teams from the leagues are the ones that are going to advance to postseason or into those regionals. After regionals, we've got 64 teams. We've gone from 500 to 64. At regionals, each winner of each of the individual 8 regionals will qualify for states. So we'll go from 64 to 8 over that time period. So each regional champion qualifies for state competition. Okay. So we very quickly, from the end of February, shake out from 500 to 8 when we get to state level competition. Come March 11th, we'll know who all of those individual teams are. So a lot of advancement there. Those are the different levels that we're going to work through. The letter of intent will be really important in making sure that we know who wants to qualify, and just a recognition that your team is all in to do those different levels there. Right. Next slide for me here, Ashley, please. Speaking of that letter of intent, let's go ahead and take a peek of that. Okay. So this letter is due January 17th. We'll have a PDF sent to you by your UCS director. It also lives within your coach's guidebook. So if you want to scan a copy of that, you don't have to wait for it. We've been receiving them already, which is awesome. So it lives on the back of your guidebook here with state competition. But that must be signed by an administrator or principal and submitted to your SOPA liaison by January 17th. Okay, on or by. Not January 18th, not January 19th, not the Monday after. January 17th is that cutoff, right? So we want to make sure all those things are in place. We know who is committed to that. Other things that will be a part of the paperwork that's involved that will come after that LOI include the PIAA SOPA championship packet. It will have in housing and meals forms, so you can make sure that you're planning what that's going to look like should you advance to those additional levels of competition. So if you get to states, we will need to know like what types of meals your folks are getting, and we're going to need to know what housing is going to look like. As we progress through the slides, we'll talk specifically about states and what housing looks like and what meals look like and what will be involved there. So when you're saying yes, you're saying yes to the different levels of postseason, including regionals and states, if your team qualifies. So it's not just a jump in and jump out. Regionals is a day trip. States is an overnight trip. Okay. And it's even if you're close, it's an overnight trip. So all teams are required to stay overnight for state competition. Okay. This is what it will look like. So this is a copy of last year's form. This year's form also, it said, is included in your packet, in your coach's guide. Same criteria is involved here. Due on the 17th of January. It is a declaration that your team is in or out. If we don't receive it, we assume you are out and you're not interested in postseason. We have to have one of these that has to say yes if you are interested. Okay. We don't have it, and then you don't qualify for those. Okay. So we need you to put that in if you are interested. All right. So let's talk about like that bottom layer of postseason competition. What does that look like? Okay. So your SOPA liaison is going to reach out to you about your specific playoff plan and schedule. Ultimately, there will be representation from every league across the state at a regional level, right? The number of teams represented are going to be based upon the number of schools within each of those leagues in comparison to other leagues across the state. So there'll be an equitable amount that are represented. So not all teams and schools are going to qualify for league championships. Okay, so please keep that in your mind. Just if you are a first year team, you're excited, your the results tracker that's provided, your win-loss record, those things throughout the season are important, and that's how you ultimately qualify for postseason. Okay, so that will be there. Yeah, your UCS director, if they haven't yet, will be providing those trackers so you are able to track where your team is within your rankings, within your league throughout the season. So you're able to see exactly where you're at. The league playoffs that will occur that we have that are also within your guidebook here is that February 17th through the 28th. So that's kind of that window that we have. The week prior to that is designated kind of as I call it dead week, but it is for any type of makeup games that may occur. If there is any type of postseason action happening, your UCS director will be in contact with you and making those specific adjustments to scheduling. You can move to the next one. Thank you. All right, let's talk about regionals. What does that look like? So your team has won, they're off to regionals. What does that look like? So we will have 8 hosted across the state. They will happen sometime between March 3rd and 11th. Our team is diligently nailing down each of the regional dates and locations right now. We are over 50% there, and we're just nailing down those last few. So those 8 will host 64 teams. Again, each league will be assigned a specific regional playoff site. So when you qualify, you're going to know which regional you're attending. That's not going to be up in the air at all. These are all just day events. Buses will not be back for dismissal though. So we typically have like a 10:30 or 11 o'clock start dependent on the competition. And then they are planned for an after school return for your team. Okay. What we do is we try our best as we're assigning regional assignments is looking at the furthest teams in a region to a specific area and making sure that those travel times are a reasonable accommodation, that they are not something that's over. We try to stay at the 2-hour mark as our threshold. It might be a couple minutes over if they are really out there, but we try to keep it right around that 2-hour mark. So we'll come in, we'll provide lunch, we'll provide snacks, the competition, and then everybody will leave following the competition ending. Again, that after each regional wraps up, the winner of each of those regionals is who will attend states. Okay. All right, one team from each of these regional groupings, they qualify, they are our final 8. We will be sending a chart out, so those regional assignments per league, so you're going to know exactly where you're at. So you qualify from your league. I'm in I say York because I live in York, so I'll use that as a reference point. I won the York League. I know exactly which regional. I'm going over to Glen Mills to compete in that regional competition. I'll know the date of that. So we'll have that available to you shortly. So you'll have that prior to the LOI being submitted as well. So you're able to make that best decision for your team. All right, so what does the game format look at regionals? It is a single elimination style tournament with an 18 bracket. We'll have a consolation bracket that is implemented as well to help us determine 1st through 8th placement. There's 3 rounds of individual games that will be played. They're individual games. They are not matches. Okay, so 1 game is what we do for each of those. Each round is 1 game, is played for 30 minutes or up to 16 points, whichever happens first. And only the first place team out of that bracket will advance to state competition. Okay. Very strict on that. Okay. Next. All right, you've made the final 8. Congratulations. All right, so go back for me one. Perfect, thanks. You've made the final 8. State competition is in Hershey, March 26th and 27th. It is a week later than typical. So it also gave us an extra week to have our regional competitions, which is a little bit helpful because we were on rapid fire last year. Last year was the first year we had implemented the 8 regional competition format. Again, we're sticking with that. States 26th and 27th of March. If you are a track team, you also have a track team at your school. Please keep that in mind that there is definitely going to be a little bit of overlap that could occur with this, and knowing that your kiddos are dedicated to this as well. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. We'll be here. This is an overnight event. Even if you are close, we ask all of our teams to stay in the hotel with us. So we all stay in one hotel. Okay. Some paperwork that was required along with the attendance to states. So we'll need this in advance. All right. So again, I'm using the example from last year's form. The form is the same. The dates are updated within your guidebook, but we require for housing, we have some specific guidelines per Special Olympics regulations, right? So athletes are housed with athletes, partners are housed with partners. Males and females must be housed separately, with the exception of some one-to-ones. It's not a legal guardian. We do need written consent. So this will also be in the packet. So don't feel like you need to memorize it, but these are the guidelines we abide by as Special Olympics Pennsylvania. Okay. So not to catch anybody off guard as well. I know we're dealing with a bunch of teenagers, participants, 18 years of age and under, may be assigned a room of up to 4 room. Okay. So we need to try and fit as many folks as we can within those rooms. All rooms do have double beds. Participants 19 years of age and over may stay 2 to a room. Per SOPA guidelines, they are adults. They can stay 2 to a room on that. Coaches, nurses could be housed 1 per room. I ask that you really pay attention and think through what housing looks like for your team, because each team is going to be capped, each school, be clear on that, each school is going to be capped at 8 total rooms. Okay. We have a finite number of rooms within the hotel, so we need to stay within that number. Okay, so 8 rooms per school allows us to make sure that we're able to stick within that. So with that means in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of folks that want to have parents as one-to-ones. We cannot keep doing that. We can't have these one-off rooms of mom or a dad with their student. So we need to have a cap on that. So that's 8 rooms. So please take that into consideration as you're putting that there. If somebody does require one-on-one, yes, absolutely. We want to make sure that we're making those accommodations for folks as well. Okay, so putting that there. So everybody's aware of that housing piece. We're going to ask you what their name is, their role, their age, their year in school, some standard things, their t-shirt size, and if they have any specific needs. So if they need an accessible room or whatnot, as I'm working with the hotel and setting up the room blocks, that we can make sure that those folks that need any special accommodations are provided those, right? Next slide for me, Ashley. All right, the next thing that you're going to see on here is just that, again, if you have anybody that is attending, like a parent, a guardian, nurse, we need to make sure that they do have all of their clearances. So if they don't particularly work with your school and they are attending as a one-to-one for a reason, they need to have all their SOPA Class A volunteer paperwork completed to be able to room with the athlete, right? So this is one of our guidelines as well, is meant to be in place to make sure that we are able to protect all of our attendees. There is a link that is going to be in the slide deck provided. So as you're thinking through this in advance, that, hey, should we qualify? This is what our rooms look like. Here's our one-to-one needs. Here's who's going to need their clearances done. We have a link in this particular slide that links you directly to the site that will get you exactly what you need to be a Class A volunteer for Special Olympics, and we need to have documentation of it. We cannot allow them to be housed if we don't have that documentation in advance, okay? So something to start now. If you're considering it, gets done. It's not at cost to them to go through this site. So there isn't any type of monies that have to be exchanged to go through this, okay? So leave that there. Yes, it includes anybody. So that everybody housed in our hotel has to have their clearances. No questions asked, okay? The additional form that will also be included in that packet is going to be around meals. So for states, we will provide a dinner on the 26th as folks come in. We also will provide lunch that will follow competition that happens on the 27th. And so you'll get a listing that comes from the Giant Center. We'll ask you to tick out how many of each of the specific items that you want as part of your order. So after competition wraps up, we will have that brought out into the stand, and we'll distribute that to the teams based upon what was ordered, right? Don't forget to include any of your bus drivers and your one-on-ones. Those can definitely be a part of the counts, but those are people that are traveling with your team. That is not mom and dad that came down to watch the competition. We will feed coaches, we will feed the team, we will feed bus drivers, we will feed one-on-ones. Okay, so that's what we want to have on that form in particular. So looking at states, what does the schedule kind of look like? Again, we're looking at the 26th and 27th of March. We're in Hershey. We play at the Giant Center. But on Wednesday evening, we have the teams arrive at the Days in Hershey no later than 5:30. Special Olympics will be housing all the teams, so I ask you to turn in those forms. I'll work with the hotel, put the blocks together, make sure it fits. The specific address for that is listed here, the Days Inn by Wyndham and Hershey on West Chocolate Avenue. If you've attended before, same place, exact same place that we have stayed for a number of years. They are very good to us, very accommodating to our group, extremely kind, and look forward to us every year. I think I was contacted in October to ask if we can be expected to be there, and we've definitely confirmed that with them there. So we will stay there. We will be going off site to have dinner, and then we will come back to Days Inn to wrap up the evening. Thursday morning starts early. We'll go through the schedule, what that looks like here soon, but we will be playing our competition at the Giant Center. The address is also included here if you're not familiar with the area. Here is our housing accommodation. So as you pull up, you're going to know exactly where you're at. Within the Days Inn, there is some specific parking information that will be provided to those schools attending, as far as dependent on what type of transportation you have, whether it's a coach bus or if it is a van or whatnot. There's some specific places that the hotel likes those different vehicles to park. So depending on who qualifies, we'll send out a specific email that says, hey, we're excited that you qualified. Let us know what type of vehicle you have. If you have a coach bus, you're parking out front in front of the building. If you are in a van or a smaller vehicle, you're going to come into the parking lot and find a spot. So either one of those would be okay there. We are playing right at the Giant Center, so everybody will, all of our spectators will enter the front entrance of the Giant Center to come watch our competitions happen. We get a side entry into the building. So we will be going through a different area, but this is exactly where we will be playing, which falls in coordination with the state basketball tournament happening at the same time. In general, here's what you can look forward to as far as our timing here. 4:30 to 5:30 is that general arrival time at the Days in Hershey. Again, we go off-site for our dinner and activities. We do that from about 6 to 8. We host a coaches meeting while those activities are happening so we can make sure everybody is on the same page, knows where they're going, what they need to do for the following day, and answer any competition-specific questions, right? By 10 o'clock, we're lights out at the hotel. It's an early morning the next day. We want to make sure everybody is ready to compete. On the 27th, we start the day bright and early. There is a shift of breakfast that happens, so we can't have all 8 teams in that lobby area at one time. So we will shift it out of who eats in which shift, and we'll provide you that information to let you know, should you qualify, who is eating super duper early and who still is eating early to get through that the waffle line or the pancake line, whichever one is being provided there. By 7:30, we need teams at the Giant Center, right? And then by 8:40, we're having our opening ceremony. So teams arrive, they're able to warm up, they're going to find their spot of where they're going to hang out if they're not competing. We do our opening ceremonies, and then we're competing by 9 o'clock. This happens super duper quickly. Once we start at 9 o'clock, so actually if you go to the next one, we'll shake through what that competition schedule looks like. So we start at 9, we are done by 11. It wraps up quickly. And after 11 happens, you will never see PVC pipe move more quickly. I promise you that. We do not ask that you guys pick up any PVC. It will be moving pretty quickly all on its own. But if you can take your team to the bleacher area that we designate for you, that's going to be most helpful for us. If you can get your team, if they need to use the restroom, get them comfortable in those bleachers, we'll clean up the competition area because basketball is going to be ready to come onto the basketball court by that 11:10 time. At around 12:30, we'll have our awards presentation. That's dependent on the halftime of the girls' basketball game that we have just cleared all that PVC for. We do that center court, do a really great presentation of that in coordination with the PIAA. So Dr. Lombardi will be presenting the medals and also the state championship and state runner-up trophies. By 1 o'clock, your teams are done with everything that they need to do with us. They can stay and watch the basketball games. They can depart. You can go over to Chocolate World and check that out. You can return home if that's what you're looking to do. But by 1 o'clock is our general anticipated time of when we're going to wrap up for the day with that. All right, so what can you expect? What are we going to provide for you as you're planning out if you're interested in this opportunity or not? So we'll provide all the competition management. We'll do all the coordination and all the event logistics. We work very closely with the PIAA of making sure that everything is in line and work with the Giant Center to make sure everything runs as smoothly as possible. We have a really awesome team that will be on site that is managing our competition, both the score tables and managing competition itself. So they will be doing a number of different things. On Wednesday, as far as meals, we will do dinner and housing. So we'll take care of those things. If you need lunch on the way there, you're going to have to take care of that piece of it. Maybe ask your kids to pack their lunches or whatnot. We will cover dinner for you. We've had a really great relationship with an organization over in Hershey that has provided really nice dinner for the last couple of years, and we're hoping that we're able to continue that same partnership this year. On Thursday, we will provide the breakfast and the lunch of competition. So we'll do that. It's a nice box lunch that the Giant Center provides to us. And then we'll do all of the logistics, like I said, regarding opening ceremonies, award ceremonies, competition management, and the cleanup of everything that's happening there. Next slide for me, Ashley. So we'll provide all that. Here's what we're going to need from y'all that are interested in attending should your team qualify. Big thing is going to be transportation to and from. So you're going to have to manage those logistics of how you're getting to and from Hershey. We operate on a 2 coaches required ratio, so a 4-to-1 ratio for Special Olympics Pennsylvania policy. Teams must have a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 8 to compete for the season roster. No additions to the roster may be made. So it is a game day style roster. Okay. All athletes must be dressed in their proper uniform. That includes sneakers, pants, and the polo. So has to be by the book, by the guidelines set in here. And it's going to be in for regionals as well. So if folks show up without sneakers, find them sneakers, because otherwise they're not competing. If they're not in the right pants, they're not competing. If they're not in proper attire and they don't have their polo, they're not competing, right? So stay in practice for regular season that people are showing up in proper attire every day to compete. And when it gets to regionals and states, you don't want it to be a surprise, right? So no jackets, everything is right by that. Again, sneakers are required. There's some things that we had run into in the past. Absolutely no Crocs. I don't care if they're in sport mode. They do not qualify as a sneaker, my friends. Okay, so they're coming to compete in a sport. They need to be in that proper attire, please. They must have, and it shouldn't be a question here, but they have to have their completed PIAA paperwork, right? This is for athletes and partners on file with your school. That one should be already done, no questions asked. We already know that, but want to make sure that that's there. They should have that to be competing in regular season. Okay, so those are the things that we're making sure that we're asking all of you to consider and know. Okay. All right, few facts keep in mind. So let's go through a couple of common things that we get here. First one, can your second team attend? Sure, absolutely. But your school is going to be responsible for the cost of meal, travel, and housing. So we'll rope them in on all of everything. We'll include that, but then we will invoice you at the end so you know what that cost is per person. Okay, so you can bring them, but you're going to have to pay an invoice to just cover the cost of those additional folks that are coming in here. We will ask that you complete a separate housing and meal form for them, just so we can make sure that we splice out of, okay, here is the folks that are the additional people. Here are the ones that SOPA is covering, and we'll cover all those costs, right? All right, support staff. Again, remember, we are limited on the number of hotel rooms that we do have. They are not infinite in number, as much as I would love to have it be so. So if a student has a one-on-one or a paraprofessional in school, then yes, absolutely. Bring them to championships, make sure that they have all the proper supports that they need, or due to a medical condition for a team member, if a nurse needs to be included in that team number housing, please do so, making sure that we've got the right support staff. A thing that would not be appropriate is just making sure that Johnny hasn't stayed away from home and we're not sure if he's gonna do all right, or we're not sure. Have that conversation early with parents. Make sure that that's okay, because that is not an indicator that Johnny needs a one-to-one to have mom or dad stay with him in that hotel that night. Okay, so it's going to have a ton of support from his team. Just have those conversations with parents and make sure everybody's comfort level and knowing what the expectations are going to be there. Parents and spectators are absolutely welcome to attend the competition on Thursday. We highly encourage it. We want to make sure that we have a good crowd out there. They will be responsible for their own transportation, housing, and food. Please let them know that the Giant Center is a cashless facility. So only credit cards are accepted, or cash can be exchanged. They have those reverse ATMs that are on site. but there is no cash exchanges that happen within the Giant Center. So just so they're aware of that, would be good. Families will not be charged entrance fees for the competition at the Giant Center. If you just let the ushers know as they're coming in that they're there for the bocce competition and not for basketball, they will be good to go. Okay, so they just got to let them know that. So we highly encourage spectators and families. Over the past couple of years, we've had schools that send spectator buses, and we had a ton of spectators that had come last year. We had a really great partnership and continue to have a really great partnership with the Department of Education and Special Bureau of Special Education, and they were able to last year at least sponsor some spectator buses coming. I'm not sure if that's something that we're able to do quite yet, so we haven't heard if that's going to happen. But if you're interested in bringing spectator bus, by all means, please do it. It adds a really awesome extra element to the competition. All right. So we covered a ton here. I'll take some questions. I think some were being answered in the chat as we chugged along there. And I'll say it's not your only time you have the opportunity to ask the question. So as you are considering and you're filling out your letters of intent, if you have questions, you are able to reach out to your specific liaison and say, hey, here's my situation, or you feel like it kind of falls in some gray area of the things that we've talked about, reach out to your liaison and they will be able to provide you a solid answer of, hey, yeah, that's kosher, or no, but here's how you could do it. And that's the way that it would work. That way we can make sure everybody's on the same page with expectations. Our goal is that you never get to a regional or state competition, go like, I didn't know that. We want you to have all the information and feel comfortable with what's shaken out at all those levels. All right. I'm just scanning through. Okay. Thanks, Ashley, for answering that one. And just to clarify for folks that are in here. So one of the questions asked was, why is it mandatory for folks to stay in the hotel for that states as an overnight trip? It is an extremely early start on the morning for us, and we want to ensure that teams are up and ready to go and they are all in one place. So we have a very specific time that we need to start, and we do not have any wiggle room for those start times. So we also want folks to be able to take part in all the things that we have going on with dinner and the activities that are happening. So preference is to keep everybody there. The other one that had popped up was clearances. If a parent is staying with a child, I'm going to need a reason of why that parent is staying with a child. If there's a particular one-to-one need, and yes, they absolutely need to have their clearances. Okay, anybody attending as part of your group for states must have all their clearances. Okay, so if it is a particular need that a parent is filling in as the one-on-one for a student that typically has one, they need to have their clearances completed, and that for the link within the slide deck that will come to you will walk them through a free version of that we accept for those clearances that we need for a Class A volunteer for Special Olympics Pennsylvania.
Lauren, there's one more that just recently got dropped in there.
I saw it. Yeah, I just saw that there.
Okay.
There is no multiplier. So as we're talking about postseason, each individual team is vying for their own right through postseason. So if my school, Lauren High School, has two teams, we don't get any special treatment or consideration. It is, I have Lauren High School Team 1, Lauren High School Team 2, and throughout regular season, each of those teams has their own individual record that is being kept track of through the season. Lauren Team 1 may qualify for postseason based upon their record. Lauren Team 2 may or may not. Okay. Or they might both, or they might not. So each individual team is what is qualifying for postseason. It is not a school situation in that particular instance, okay? Perfect. Okay. Any additional questions? Again, take in all this information. Feel free to reach out to your particular liaisons and say, hey, here's my situation. Does this work? Does this not work? Want to make sure that you have all the info to make the best decision for your teams. It's a really cool and awesome experience. If you have never attended, the energy is pretty electric through the gym to see our teams on the Giants uh, center floor with the Jumbotron, with all of the logos of the teams flashing and the Unified Sports logos. It's a really special event, and the announcing is really cool. So there's a bunch of different aspects that aren't going to be captured in any other level of competition that we have throughout the season. So I look forward to seeing the 8 teams that qualify. I look forward to seeing as many of the 64 teams that are competing at regionals as I can. Please reach out with any questions. Good luck throughout the rest of your regular season. And here's to a great rest of over 669 competitions happening statewide. So thank you all for your dedication to helping make that happen. It definitely doesn't happen without you and stepping up and coaching your team. So have a great rest of your afternoon. Look forward to seeing y'all soon.